What's up? This is the long-awaited video that people have been asking about, have been talking about, have been sending me messages about. Rel X was one of the first people ever who kept hounding me like, you got to do the truth behind the breakup of T.RO.Y and CL Smooth. It's been 20-something years. Listen, T.RO.Y and CL Smooth, they were like in the golden age of hip-hop in the 90s. In that golden era where things were changing. CL Smooth and T.RO.Y came up from Mount Vernon, where Diddy was at. You know, Heavy D was the legend and the king during that time. And during that time when Hev was out, it was hip-hop was about positivity, it was about dance, it was about expressing the, you know, the conditions of what was going on in the community. And T.RO.Y was one of the same people that was in the same situations, you know, and they were students of it. But CL was really the consciousness of it and not want to use profanity. He didn't want to do it at all. So when the gangster rap movement was taking off in like the late 80s, they were not really with it at all. They were the contrast of everything gangster at the time. They were about staying true to the crew. They was part of the Native Tongue family they had with De La Soul, Jungle Brothers, Tribe Called Quest. You know, they were more on that level, and they wanted to stay in that zone. They was like, we gonna keep it going this way. We gonna let everybody else do their thing. We gonna keep it going this way. This is what needs to be. So when they dropped, it was, you know, they had the Mecca and the Soul Brother. But the first thing they had was, I think, All Sold Out. They dropped that. In like 91, that was like a smaller album that they released. It was like an EP. And it got some attention. You know, and the next year they came out with the Mecca and the Soul Brother, and you know, that was it. Mecca and the Soul Brother. When Mecca and the Soul Brother hit, it was, we talking, man, everybody was CL Smooth, T.RO.Y, they the new foundation of everything, you know. This is what the music's all about. They were highly praised. Now, I know people that look at CL Smooth and T.RO.Y and they look at the main, it's some people that like the main ingredient way better than Mecca and the Soul Brother. I'm serious. I'm just saying it. You know, I'm not saying it's 100% true. I'm just, you know, putting it out there that there was some people that really thought that. Mecca and the Soul Brother was a classic to me. Classic. Like, I'm like, they reminisce over you, T.R.O.Y. Come on. They dedicated that to T.R.O.Y. They guy that died. It was in Heavy D's group. Heavy D and the boys, they all from money earning Mount Vernon. You know, but that spearheaded, that song is like in the top, you know, 100 songs. This is like one of the top albums of all time. You know, some people ranked it top 25 greatest records of all time. The Return of the Mecca. I mean, when it came there, Straighten It Out, which is by, come on, Soul Brother #1. Anger of the Nation, on and on. It's like that. The Basement. I mean, what could you say I mean, my goodness. This was, I would say, a classic out of the whole bunch. Lots of Lovin', I think, was on there, or was it on the bonus one? Nah, Lots of Lovin' was on there. So, Lots of Lovin' definitely, I think, was on there. I think that was probably the last single they put out. But anyway, success for the album. It got a lot of praise. It did a lot of other things. You know, the album was teaching a lot of Nation of Islam things with anger in the nation, you know, straighten it out. Lots of Lovin'. It's about self-empowerment. Then, you know, they basically was like, this is the album that's going to put you on the map. The next album going to get you paid. You know, so the people that was in charge of Elektra at that time was, you know, doing what they were doing and, you know, trying to keep them engaged with what was going on and, you know, with the whole situation. Knowing that things are transitioning in hip hop in the 90s as far as like, man, they should have really blew up. So the main ingredient was the one that was really going to put things in perspective and they was going to take off. And from the moment it came in there, the song, the main ingredient, Monster. I Gotta Love, Monster, Take You There, Monster, Searching. It's a lot of monster songs on the main ingredient. The main ingredient is reviewed and revered as just as great as Mecca and the Soul Brother. In the House, are you kidding me? Sun Won't Come Out. But it just didn't hit the scale that people thought would. They reminisce over you. So with that being said, a lot of problems start to ensue. You know, during its early, Elektra Records was bouncing from, you know, trying to get in there. They was more of a Teddy Pendergrass type of record label at the time, and once they started going into this whole group and all the stuff they were doing in the 90s, but in the 90s it was, you know, like the sister labels were starting to go through a group of changes to where Busta Rhymes at one point was running Elektra Records. You know, that just shows you where it was going at in the 90s. But see, in 94, Metallica sued Elektra to terminate their contract and get their masters out of them because of the California Labor Code, and allowed the employees to be released from a personal service after 7 years. So after this created a whole thing as far as business contracts is concerned within the deal. Now, the royalties and what you would get in the royalty rate was very low as far as payouts, and CL was like, "Man, what's going on with this money?" You know, and this wasn't looking right. The money is, you know, it's not adding up the way it's supposed to be. So people start looking at the contract, and Warner Brothers, who really owned Elektra, came in and cut a deal to Metallica in exchange for dropping a lawsuit, which would be much more beneficial for them so they can get more royalty payments. Now, I bring this up because the royalty payout for groups such as CL Smooth and Pete Rock, they were basically going to get nothing out of the deal. They weren't getting anything close to what they were doing, and they were taking a massive amount of money at the record label company as far as Elektra and what they were paying out. And Warner Brothers got to get their cut. So Doug Morris wasn't like they were selling a bunch of records. So at this point, what was happening was at Elektra was the Mecca and the Soul Brother album. Half of that money went into promotion for the second album, The Main Ingredient. Elektra wasn't really risking any of their money. They were using funds that came from Mecca and the Soul Brother to really pay for the Main Ingredient album. And they did some, they put some music, some fund into it and did what they could. But they felt there's nothing on this album that can sell and break us through. Neither one of these albums even went gold. If I'm not mistaken at the time, The Main Ingredient definitely didn't. It wasn't even charting like that. And as much as people loved the records, they just weren't charting. So financially, they wasn't really breaking the mold. Because in the 90s, in the late 90s, everything was going to a whole new level. The Public Enemy era was done. Everybody's going to a new phase. You got LL dancing. You got everybody moving towards a different movement. As far as music was really aggressive in the early 90s. So people was like, man, things are getting out of control. And it was more West Coast at the time. West Coast was made a big wave in as far as what people were listening to. So people were listening to more aggressive era of rap. And East Coast, native tongue type of music that was good in the early 90s, 92. By 94, music had went into a whole nother direction of more West Coast, more Snoop Dogg, more gangster. Once Dre and them dropped and Death Row came out, it's the market changed. So they were looking for something that they could play on the radio because the West Coast had basically flooded even the East Coast radio at that time. So songs like, they were doing like I Get Physical or I Gotta Love. These songs were not going to make it. The Main Ingredient. These were not radio friendly songs to them. So Elektra really didn't care. And now they're looking like, man, all these songs was sampled heavy. So we'll be playing out so much in sampling now that there's not going to be anything left for the artist. Now, the dissolvement of the group. The group was still scheduled to make, another album and do some things, but it was miscommunication between CL and P.ROC. P.ROC is being, he's a producer, so he's getting more money out of the deal than the actual artist. They're not breaking the bank, but by him being the producer, he's getting producer credits too, so he's getting money. Now, he feels that the business end of it, they should have been getting a lot more, and by Heavy D being the guy that walked him into the doors and got him started in the late 80s, P.ROC, that, Hev got him. Hev got us. Hev gonna help us out. He showed us the deal here. And at that time, they got a deal with Elektra. They didn't get a deal with Heavy D's and them company, which was Uptown Records. So they deal came to Elektra, but Hev was the one that really helped them out and showed them through the doors. So right away, they was like certain relationships they wasn't really feeling. And instead of communicating with each other, CL got his team that's in his ear telling him what's going on over there and what's this and that, and they're listening to the wrong people. Instead of having a brother-to-brother conversation, they coming into it with immature. You got to understand, these guys were young. This is like 95. They got to be in their early 20s. So the mind state is not in the same place. you know, as you were when you were older of age, of maturity, where, you know, they were basically boys dealing with a man type situation. They didn't really understand how the rates were being paid out with Elektra, and they felt, you know, CL felt like, man, this thing with Pete Rock, you know, ain't working out, and Pete ain't really communicating with me. And Pete was like, look, man, if you ain't saying to me, you just got a funky attitude about it. Like, you know, like, look, this is what it is. This is the deal. This is what the contract says. This is that. And they were like, man, you know what? You know, there is no group no more, man. I won't do it. Because Pete Rock was like, look, we could just, you know, let's try to do this thing, man. But they couldn't. They could not salvage it. CL felt that Pete Rock lied to him about something. Allegedly, this is what happened. The information came back that Pete Rock was lying to him about, like, how much they were actually getting. And Pete Rock is like, I never said that, you know, and then you never even had a conversation with me about that. You telling me what someone else is saying that I said. And CL's like, nah, that's what you said to me. And you said that to this guy, and you told me something different. So I just fell back. You know, and I said, oh, okay, I'm being played, you know, like, so this broke my heart. And he's just like, man, I backed off of music. So when they broke up, he had deals on the tape. You know, when they broke up, CL was like, oh, CL finna go solo. People were waiting for him. He just had a Sprite commercial. Everybody was waiting on him to come out. Pete Rock went straight to working and started doing his deals, you know, and started going through music. But as brothers, he kept in contact with him, and he let him know, like, this is not my fault. This is the record company was, you know, Elektra is having problems. The communication is with them. Our money and all the budget and the promoting our album, they screwing that up. I ain't really getting nothing, bruh. You know, I'm the producer. I get a producer's credit, you know, but this is it. But once they were able to have that conversation, you know, it fixed a lot of the problems. But CL, the reason why it looked so bad is because CL just fell out of love with music, man. He couldn't write. Couldn't write no more. When somebody write from a passion of doing it and they don't treat it as a job, you're going to be in a situation like he was in. He was in a funk. You know, and he just had to get himself back right. You know, he was on Pete Rock's first solo album in 98. CL did a song with him. He did another song on his other album some years later. They remained friends. It's just that from a business standpoint, CL wasn't right. You know, as far as getting right. He want to write the songs he want to write. He's not going to go commercially and do things that is not agreeable to him. What him and Pete Rock had disagreements with in the past was they disagree on, like, okay, I think we should try more. Like, let's try to do something and find a middle ground. CL wasn't willing to do nothing, no compromise, zero compromise. We gonna do it this way and that's that. He was like, look, let's try a little something different. You know, let's, you know, do this or that. He wasn't playing ball. You know, and when you ain't willing to even come to the table a little bit, they gonna be like, well, what they expect us to do now? His guy ain't even thinking of coming to the table. So what are we gonna do? What we plan on doing here? So with that being said, we are officially done with this. They're working together. They did a couple of tours. They have a great relationship, man. And that's it. Mecca and the Soul Brothers still rocking. It's your boy Carcino. I'm out. Don't forget to subscribe and click that link in the description box. Make a donation. I'm out. Especially if you like the video.